Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the entire 19th century in chamber music. You know, one of the advantages of getting box sets of things, of which there are so many these days, is that they allow you to get collections by individual composers of music in what we should call maybe sort of mixed musical media. The three M's, mixed musical media. Get it? No, seriously. You know, composers, especially in the 19th century when they were writing chamber music, you might have a few quartets, a quintet, a sextet, a trio, a few sonatas for various instruments. And there's one of each or two of each or three of each, and that's about it. And it could be a real pain in the neck to scramble around running to get individual performances. On the other hand, some things are really, really important works, and you're going to want to collect multiple versions of them. I mean, you want to try and find specific performances by your favorite artists. And so, yeah, you're going to go looking for individual releases. But it's a good and convenient way to just get a box and you get all of the necessary repertoire and you can become familiar with it. And you can become familiar with it in mostly very, very good performances. And then from there, you can find the pieces you like and kind of branch out. So what I have here are 7 different composers in 7 different boxes. Well, actually 8 boxes, but one of them is sort of a 2-box set. And between them, we will be able to cover all of the major chamber music composers after Beethoven, between the death of Beethoven and the 20th century. And that's a really convenient thing to be able to do. It's a wonderful way to start building your collection. So without further ado, and in roughly chronological order, let's go through this. Let's just go through these boxes. I've just picked them out because I've been listening to a lot of chamber music lately, and I'm thinking about talking about individual works. I mean, I've already done some of that, but to get started, you know, if you're a collector, everybody needs to start somewhere. And these are they're terrific sets. There's no reason not to get them. There's no reason not to have a way to get a pile of chamber works at one throw and then use them as the source of further investigation. And that is the concept here. So let's start with Schubert. Now, Schubert is primarily, as far as instrumental music goes, a chamber music composer. You've got the quartets, you've got the piano sonatas, and then you've got a whole bunch of other things. And my concern here is mostly those other things, because they are wonderful other things. And, you know, you're going to want to get them. So this Sony Vivarte box is really a wonderful way to get a pile of Schubert. It's 5 discs. And you get, oh my goodness, look at all the good stuff you get. And these are on period instruments. So, and they're good performances on period instruments. So it's a nice way to simultaneously get a sense of what the period instrument movement has to offer in this music, as well as getting some really, really great Schubert. And the other thing it's worth pointing out as far as the period instrument movement goes is that here is where it ends. After Schubert, there really aren't many period instrument performances of later music because we're talking about effectively modern instrumental technique. Unless the period instrument people want to be completely crazy. Well, there are plenty of those who do and who are completely crazy. And, you know, they'll still tinkle away at their forte pianos and play string music without vibrato and whatnot. But, it's nonsense in Schubert, quite frankly, but that's not the point. The point is these are really good performances with mostly, there you go. They're so good, I just threw them across the room. Let's see, who's playing this? Josh Van Immerseel, Vera Beths, Honor Bilsma, L'Archibudelli, a wonderful group, really, and Mozzafiato, and others. So what do we get here? On CD1, you get the 2 piano trios. Oh my God, are they fabulous works. Then you get on CD2, the string quartet in E-flat major, and the 2-string trios. And then you get the string quintet, the big string quintet that I did a whole separate talk on. Not my favorite performance because I prefer modern instruments in this work, but it's still a very good one of its type. And the rondo for violin and string quartet in A major. And then we get, let's see, the Trout Quintet. Oh, I'm going to do a whole talk on the Trout Quintet. I'm amassing my trout. We're going to go trout fishing together soon, believe me. And then the Arpeggione Sonata for all of those of you who, are looking for your arpeggione, which is kind of like a cross between a cello and a viola, sort of, kind of. And let's see, the Adagio for piano trio in E-flat major. And finally, last but not least, the wonderful, splendid, glorious octet, which is really a huge serenade in a whole bunch of movements that fits on a CD all by itself. It's like an hour long. This is just a really nice, easy way to get all of those other Schubert chamber works. And so I can recommend it quite highly. And if you can get your hands on it, go for it. Next, chronologically, we have to talk about Mendelssohn. Mendelssohn is still one of the most underrated of all of the major Romantic composers. There are a couple huge masterpieces that people like A Midsummer Night's Dream or the Italian Symphony, and tons and tons and tons and tons of music that no one pays attention to, including extraordinary chamber music. And if you want to get a really fine sort of introduction to Mendelssohn's chamber music, this disc on Audita, featuring the Mandelring String Quartet, contains all of his chamber music for strings. And there are some popular works in here, like the octet, and then pieces you probably haven't heard of, including the 6 string quartets, the last of which, the scary, expressionistic F minor quartet that he wrote in memory of his sister. That one you probably will have heard, but the other 5 nobody listens to. The first 2 are 2 of the most extraordinary pieces of chamber music in the entire 19th century. They are, in terms of thematic integration and transmogrification of thematic ideas. I mean, Brahms learned a lot from these quartets, I'll tell you. They're enormously sophisticated and expressive and beautiful, but all 6 quartets are amazing. It is a fantastic series of string quartets, arguably the best German set of string quartets after Beethoven, and that includes Brahms, by the way. So you get the octet, you get the string quartets, you get some miscellaneous pieces for string quartet, and the 2 string quintets, which are also gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous works. When I was doing my book on Mendelssohn, I was discovering this music because, like everybody, I wasn't paying much attention. I really wasn't. And that was my loss. And I put on the string quintets and I just went, whoa, where have these been all my life? There's so much great stuff. There's also the piano quartets. I did talk about one of those, which are fabulous, one of which is my telephone ringtone. But boy, this is great music. And these are wonderful performances by the Mandelring String Quartet on Audita. So I really, really recommend very strongly that you get this very reasonably priced box of all of the Mendelssohn chamber music for strings. It's a great way to get started, and I guarantee it's going to open up a whole new world that you didn't even know existed. It's fantastic music, absolutely fantastic. Next, we come to Schumann. Now, Schumann's chamber music, like, certain other aspects of his output, his choral music, for example, is seriously neglected and underrated, except for certain pieces like the piano quartet. But there's a lot of it, and it's quite marvelous. And this disc gives you everything, except the piano quartet, or much of it. And that's really cool. You get, here it is, by the way. It's with a collection of people led off by violinist Ilya Gringolds on the Onyx label. 5 discs of stuff. And again, you see, who's going to find these collections? Because, Gringolds is a magnificent artist. He's got other fabulous artists with him. They play the bejesus out of the music. It's quite marvelous. But, it's a box. It's not like some famous group. It's not the Juilliard String Quartet or the Alban Berg String Quartet, because these chamber music works in the mixed media are not going to be performed usually by regularly constituted ensembles. You get a bunch of people together and you do chamber music, which is how chamber music was written to be played. So this onyx set is, again, very reasonably priced and really worth considering. And it contains, get this, the 3 violin sonatas, the 3 piano trios. Yes, there are 3 of them here. They're all here. And let's see, the string quartet number 1, 2, and 3, the 3 string quartets, and the piano quintet. That's a wonderful selection of less known Schumann works. Because everybody knows like the basic stuff. Again, you know the Render Symphony, you know the Spring Symphony, or you know Carnival. You may know your Fantasy in C, or the David's Bundler Tenza, or one of those pieces, the Symphonic Etudes. You know, some famous piano works, the Arabesque. But, you know, there's a lot of other stuff, and it's worth exploring. And here you can get it in fantastic performances. Just for the record, the major performers are the Greengold's Quartet, which is a quartet Ilya Greengold's put together. Also with, let's see, Peter Lal, piano, and who's playing the cello here? Dmitri, I can't even read this. Dmitri, I can't read this at all. You know, it is absolutely amazing. By the way, let me digress and rave while I hunt around to this. You know, they issue these discs, and the print is so small. These are reading glasses, by the way. They're magnifying everything. But you still can't see people's names. It blows my mind that you can't even read this stuff. It's enough to make you crazy. Here we go. Let's see, who's the cellist? Dmitri Kuzov. Let's call him that, because I'm not going to waste my time trying to call him something else. It doesn't matter. The playing is terrific. And I just wish they had bigger type. You know, as we get older, this becomes an issue. But seriously, ever since CDs came out, you know it. You know, they put notes on the back that used to be on the album, and they're like microscopic, and you sit there with a magnifying glass trying to figure out what they're saying. It's unbelievable. And then they print, you know, you have a nice, beautiful, attractive blue cover with blue teeny type, which blends in perfectly to the background. Anyway, it's on onyx. It's Schumann Chamber Works, Ilya Greengold's. That's the guy you've got to keep in mind. A terrific box, really a terrific box. And after Schumann, why not do Brahms? Now, as many of you may know, Brahms was basically a chamber music guy. That was his medium of choice. It really was. I mean, when you think about, there are maybe a dozen Brahms orchestral works, you know, 4 symphonies, 2 serenades, 2 piano concertos, 2 concertos with strings, 2 overtures. That's the orchestral works. But a wonderful, multifarious variety of chamber pieces in all kinds of different media. That's where Brahms' originality and genius, and I also think love of instrumental color, really comes to the fore. And this DG box, you know, I was going through this when I did my talk on the Brahms sextets. I was, you know, dipping into here. You know, I had this. I wasn't paying too much attention to it. So I started listening through it. They got great performances here. Absolutely great performances. You get the complete chamber music on 11 CDs. And that's a lot of stuff. It's really a lot of stuff. And it's really good to hear this music in context, because some pieces, you know, for example, I've never been a big fan of the Brahms string quartets. I think they're fussy and overwritten, to be honest. And I still think they're fussy and overwritten, to be honest. But it's better to hear them in context. Like so many composers, when they wrote string quartets, I think Brahms got a little bit his knickers in a twist, because he had to follow in the footsteps of Haydn and Beethoven. That was an even bigger deal than writing his first symphony, I think. You know, there's, you know, the story is that Brahms wrote like 20 string quartets and destroyed all of them, except for the 3 that he published. But here you get his violin sonatas, you get his piano trios, you get his cello sonatas, you get the clarinet quintet and the other works, the clarinet sonatas, you get the horn trio, which is fabulous, just fabulous, and the piano quintet. And, you know, there's just so much great stuff. And, of course, the sextets. And, again, Brahms is another composer who wrote 2 fantastic string quintets. And nobody seems to want to play these string quintets. The only quintet that people pull out regularly are Mozart's and the one Schubert. The two viola, Mozart wrote quintets with viola, and Schubert wrote one with an extra cello. And I think the reason the quintets don't get played that much is because they have no regular composition. Some have two violas, some have two cellos, and as a result of that, you don't find any regularly constituted string quintet ensembles. You have string quartets who hire an extra person as necessary, and that makes quintets far, far more difficult to program. Frankly, they ought to be played on string quartet, recitals, where you just have an extra person come and play the extra instrument, and they would have a lot more exposure, but they don't get it. And the Brahms quintets, like the Mendelssohn quintets, are as good as unknown, and they are fantastic. Now, most of the performers here, let's see, it's the Alban Berg Quartet, and in the quintets, you've got the Hagen Quartet with Gérard Cosset, they're great performances. They really are. And you have the Emerson String Quartet and the String Quartets, which are also very, very fine performances. And Leon Fleischer in the Piano Quintet. I mean, these are just terrific artists and really, really fine performances. And I mean, in the piano quartets, you've got, these are sort of classic versions with Tamás Vásary and friends, let's put it that way. They're just wonderful performances. The Amadeus Quartet and the sextets. I've enjoyed going through this box just hugely. Carl Leister in the Clarinet Quintet, first class. And there was another complete Brahms chamber music box on Hyperion, which seems to not be in print anymore, which is really a pity because that's really the only big competition for this one. It would be nice, I think, to have both because I like to have both of everything. But this is a wonderful set, absolutely first class set. And how many of those are you going to find of all the Brahms chamber music on 11 discs? This is the DG set, and eminently worth having. However, I'm doing the however in the middle of the talk this time. The greatest chamber music composer of the 19th century, for my money, was Dvořák. Dvořák's chamber music is also hugely underrated because why? Well, a lot of it was early-ish. And early Dvořák doesn't get any attention at all. The myth is that he didn't write good music till he came into contact with Brahms, whereas the truth is just the opposite, which is that Brahms wrote better music when he came into contact with Dvořák. It was a very mutually fructifying relationship, shall we say. But Dvořák wrote tons of great chamber music, and he wrote tons of it before he met Brahms, and he was a mature and completely masterful composer before he met Brahms. Brahms channeled him into a more sort of classical path, and so we tend to listen to just a few late masterpieces. The Dumke Trio, the American Quartet. You know what they are. The Piano Quintet. Those are the big Dvořák chamber works. But there's tons of this stuff. And here's the composer that gets two boxes. Here they are. You get Chamber Works 1 and Chamber Works 2 on Supraphon as part of their Dvořák edition. And these are absolutely first-class performances, stunning performances even. And in box number 1, let's see here, you get, the three string quintets, one of which is a quintet with double bass, which is just amazing, and the Notturno for string quintet, which was originally a movement plugged into one of the double bass quintet, which was a movement taken from the fourth string quartet, which I played a sample for you separately. And let's see, the string sextet, and the two piano quintets and the two piano quartets. And don't sneer at the earlier versions of the quintet, the piano quintets and the piano quartets, because they are lovely, lovely works, first-class works, heavily influenced by Schumann and Mendelssohn, yes, but full of Dvořák's own, special gift of melody and his own originality. And wow, this is great. This is a great box. It's with all the Dvořák people. You get, let's see who's doing these things. Oh, lots of Czech people whose names I can't pronounce. But, basically the Pinocha Quartet and the Suk Trio and friends, all the great, Czech chamber music people are doing these. Then in this other box, this for me is the gem, Chamber Music Works 2. Because, Dvořák wrote just unlike Brahms, Brahms, one of the reasons Brahms has the reputation he has is because he only wrote major masterpieces for professional musicians. All of his music is difficult. All of it is extended. All of it shows great mastery of form. He had a certain, quality level, and he was writing sophisticated music for professionals. And so most of us just sit back and go, oh, it's Brahms. It's so sophisticated. It's for professionals. It's difficult. We admire that. We admire that without having to actually listen to it, which is, I think, sort of a pity because it's very listenable. But, Dvořák was also just as content to write occasional works, things for domestic consumption, like the bagatelles for harmonium and strings. Oh, God, what a gorgeous work. There are all kinds of little gems strewn amongst box number 2 here. But here you get the 3 piano trios. And, there are 4 piano trios, including the Dumke. So there's 4 piano trios. And again, the early ones are beautiful, numbers 1 and 2. And the third, the F minor trio, is probably the greatest piano trio after Beethoven. I mean, wow, is that a piece? It's right up there with Dvořák's 7th Symphony. It's extraordinary. And then you get all the music for violin and piano, and there's more of it than you would think. A lot of it is lighter music, salon music, you might call it. But melodically, it's just top quality stuff. So, why would you not love it? Like the romantic pieces for violin and piano and the sonatina for violin and piano. These pieces that nobody plays. And, they've been recorded a bunch of times, but wow, are they lovely. The sonatina was Dvořák's Opus 100. He deliberately did that for Opus 100 to write something light and peppy rather than something big and pretentious. And it says something about the kind of guy that he was. I'm going to play you, though. There are all these miniatures that they're just so much fun to discover. And one of them hasn't even been published yet, but it's near and dear to my heart. It's only 3.5 minutes long. I'm going to play you the whole thing. It's the Serenade for flute, violin, viola, and triangle. How many people wrote one of those? It's an early work, and it's delicious. Wait till you hear this. It is charming, but never cloying. It's an extraordinary little bonbon, It's basic. So here it is, the Serenade for flute, violin, viola, and triangle by Dvořák. I mean, come on. How can you not love a guy who would write something like that? The other great work here, by the way, is the tercet, which is, just it really an amazing piece for two violins and viola. I think it's written for. It's just amazing. Where is it? The terzetto. Yes, it's here. And so, there's just a bazillion wonderful things. You also get in this box the Slavonic dances for piano, four hands. And you get From the Bohemian Forest, which are characteristic pieces for piano, four hands that he didn't orchestrate. Well, some of them he did, or arranged. And the Legends for piano, four hands. So you get his piano, four hand music, and that's hot stuff. The Legends we know in the orchestral version. It is lovely hearing the piano originals. I mean, I'm just astonished at the beauty and variety of chamber works that Dvořák produced. Completely unaffected, humble music. He just wrote fabulous music all the time for everybody. So, Dvořák chamber music, you just gotta have. I mean, these two boxes, fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. It's super fun. Look them up. I've already done a talk on the Dvořák string quartet separately. They're in a separate box with the Pinocchio quartet, but I wanted to talk about these two because there is so much to discover, so much that you haven't heard, and you just guaranteed to find something to love. And now we leave Central Europe and Germany together because another hugely neglected area of the repertoire, and I saved it for last because it makes me crazy that it's a hugely neglected area of the repertoire, is France. Yes, France. Because from the middle of the 19th century on, French composers started writing in German forms. And that, of course, included symphonies, once they finally got started with those. And even more significantly, and I mean more significantly, chamber music. Because even these composers like Franck, who turned out one symphony, wrote masterpieces of chamber music. The quartet, the quintet, the violin sonata, they're out there. And the two composers who really, really just nailed the chamber music medium were Saint-Saëns and Fauré. And I have two sets for you that I just think you should snap up without hesitation. One is this 2-disc set on Hyperion featuring the Nash Ensemble in chamber music by Saint-Saëns. You get this. The septet, I love the septet. The septet is scored for piano, two violins, viola, cello, double bass, and trumpet. What a great assortment of stuff. It's just delightful. It's so delightful. It's just genius. Absolute genius. Then you get the Tarantella in A minor for flute, clarinet, and piano. The bassoon sonata. How many people knew that Saint-Saëns wrote a bassoon sonata? And the piano quartet in B flat. And you get his piano quintet in A minor. And his oboe sonata. Yes, and the clarinet sonata. He wrote sonatas for all the major woodwind instruments. And finally, the caprice on Danish and Russian airs. That's for piano, flute, oboe, and clarinet. I mean, these are delicious, fabulous, delicious works. Now, there are some discs that have like the complete Saint-Saëns wind chamber music, but I like this set because you also get some of the stuff for strings and piano, although not the string quartets. There's no excuse in the world not to listen to this music. It is fabulous. And this 2-disc set, there's so much on here, so much variety, beautifully played, luminously recorded. Get a couple discs of Saint-Saëns chamber music. What do you got to lose? Go for it. Finally, as I said, the great French chamber music composer in the 19th century and overlapping into the 20th was Gabriel Fauré. Another composer, we play the Requiem, okay, and maybe the first violin sonata and one of the piano quartets. There's a lot of wonderful chamber music. And this is a fantastic set. It's on Alpha, and it features Eric Lesage and a whole bunch of other people playing, the Quatuor Eben, which is lovely, and Alexandre Tarot and Emmanuel Pahoud on flute. I mean, it's a terrific bunch of people doing all the Fauré chamber music with piano. That's all the chamber music with piano. And, one of the things, it just drives me crazy here. He wrote one string quartet. Why couldn't they have put the string quartet in here? You've got the quatuor eben. You might as well do it and wrap up your Fauré chamber music, or most of it. But this is great stuff. There are 2 cello sonatas and autres pièces. And you get, 2 piano quartets, 2 piano quintets. Oh, they're so beautiful. They're kind of like the string quintet equivalent in Fauré land, because nobody knows the piano quintets. They're late works, and they are wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. And then you get the piano trio, and then you get, the Dolly Suite, Masque et Bergamasque, and Souvenir de Bayreuth, fabulous little thing. The Fantasy for Flute and Piano, et autres pièces. And some of the autres pièces are simply charmant. You're going to want to hear those autres pièces. And finally, the violin sonatas. A tremendous legacy of totally unforgettable and distinctive chamber music. Fauré was one of those composers whose style we like to call subtle. And it was, but it wasn't lacking in passion. It is sometimes understated as harmonically incredibly supple. He's subtle and supple, fluide, as they say en français. Really just lovely and warm and mellifluous, and often harmonically fascinating. Very, very interesting. He was not a regressive composer. He was not a conservative composer. He was a contemporary composer in his own way, and a late Romantic master. And his chamber music is going to be, I guarantee, one of the great discoveries of your musical life. It truly will be. It is splendid. You really ought to hear it if you care about Romantic chamber music. Do not let this hidden master remain hidden, at least as far as your collection is concerned. So that wraps it up in this survey of 19th century chamber music. You get these boxes, you basically cover an entire century with 7 different composers and tons and tons of stuff that you can set yourself up with and spend the rest of your life exploring. And what could be bad about that? And it doesn't even take up that much space. I mean, all things considered, look, here's the whole pile. Do you know how much mastery there is in here? Sometimes I just look at this stuff and I go, wow, isn't it just fantastic that we have this opportunity to listen to all of this great music? And it's just here conveniently in these little boxes. And it's a lifetime. It's a lifetime of pleasure, a lifetime of enjoyment, and just one more excuse to keep on listening, folks. So thank you for joining me, and please, please enjoy your 19th century chamber music. Take care.